Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on teaching organic farming and gardening. So we are really excited to welcome a sold-out audience of 100 educators from around the U.S. And we're also very excited as this is our very first webinar for all of us here, so we really appreciate your interest. So you're going to notice some beeping noises while I'm talking, and that's people logging on, and apparently we haven't quite got how to mute that. So please go ahead and excuse that. So today you'll hear from Jim Leaf and Sky DeMuro, two farmer educators from the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems, which we refer to as CASFS, from the University of California at Santa Cruz. My name is Jan Perez. I'm the Associate Specialist in Research and Education at CASFS. We're also here with Martha Brown, our editor at CASFS, who will be collecting your questions and sharing them with Jim and Sky. And we are also two of the three editors of the training manuals that we'll be reviewing today. We're also here with Jesse Beckett from CCOF, California Certified Organic Farmers, who's managing the technical aspects of the webinar. And also the webinar is brought to you by CASFS, CCOF, and is funded by Western SARE. So how this will work. Today's session will last for an hour, at least an hour, and we hope to have lots of time for questions at the end. If we have a lot of questions, we can run over till about 12:45. So we'll see how that goes. And before we get started, I want to orient you to the technology that we're using today. If you can hear my voice, that's good. You should also be able to see the presentation at this point. There's a picture in the lower corner of a farmer on a tractor and folks following him, and a sign that says, "Can you hear us?" Or if you can't hear us, and see if you're having technical issues. So if you're having any technical issues, please call CCOF 831-423-2263, extension 6260. This number is also listed on your confirmation email and the reminder email sent yesterday. So on your screen, you should be able to see both the presentation slide, and on the right hand of the webinar window, you'll see a section called Chat, and this is where you can send in your questions. So select sending your questions to the organizer, and we will save your questions for the end. As a note, we'll be sending you a link to the recording of this webinar in a couple days. So finally, before we get started, I'm going to just share a bit about our presenters. Jim Leaf has more than 40 years of experience as an organic farmer and educator, working throughout California's Central Coast region as an instructor and farmer mentor, as well as running the organic research sites at the USDA's Experiment Station in Salinas, California. He was awarded the Pedro Illick Outstanding Educator Award by the Small Farm Center in California in 2007. Specializing in small to medium scale mixed specialty crop farm production, Jim wrote and contributed to many of the units in the Teaching Organic Farming and Gardening Manual, focusing on soil management, tillage, cover crops, irrigation, weed management, and soil testing. Sky DeMuro is a garden instructor at CASFS. She helps manage the Chadwick Garden with Orrin Martin, where she educates apprentices and undergraduate interns. Sky also teaches workshops for home gardeners and beginning farmers on the Central Coast. Prior to working at UCSC, Sky co-managed a diverse 7-acre organic farm near Santa Cruz. She's apprenticed on educational and CSA farms in California and Massachusetts since 2006. She's co-founder of Root Down Farm, a heritage breed, pasture-based farm in Pescadero, California, where she helps connect people to honestly raised meat. Sky has also contributed to the training manual units on tillage cultivation, direct seeding, and transplanting, and marketing, or making and using compost. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sky.
Good morning. So we're just going to show you here what we're going to be talking about in detail. We're going to give you some history of the curriculum manual and what we do at CASFS. We're going to talk about who uses this resource, which might be many of you out there. Talk about who helped fund this and what's new. If you have used the old manuals, we'll point out what's new in the latest revisions. And we're going to look in detail at one chapter, the making and using compost, so that you can begin to get familiar with how the chapters are laid out. And we'll also talk about additional tools that are available online and modes of instruction. We'll make sure you know how to access the training manuals, both online and in print. And then Jim and I will talk about attributes of a good presentation, leaving plenty of time for discussion and Q&A.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us today. If you're not familiar with the UCSC farm, there's plenty of information on our website to orient you to all that goes on there. It's a pretty multifaceted farm and teaching and demonstration farm. Started in 1967, but it's really gone through an interesting evolution through the years to it really stands out kind of worldwide as one of the better examples of a teaching and demonstration farm associated or affiliated with a university campus. So we're on the UCSC campus, and it is probably important to point out that I mean, one of the reasons the farm has been so successful in its evolution is that it has received significant funding support through the years from the University of California, along with a lot of grants, gifts, foundations, etc., to keep it supported. And I think one of the unique things about the UCSC farm is that the farm managers and garden managers are the primary apprentice instructors, and the real benefit to this is that they've got their hands in the dirt, so they really know, they understand the systems that they're teaching, and therefore can do a much better job of instruction. We also invite a long list of speakers to cover a range of topics, from soil science, pest management, food safety, farm labor issues, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. So throughout the years, the staff at the UCSC farm has really worked diligently to really figure out how to make this teaching work. To really, to kind of find what are the best modes of instruction for all the various topics, and so we've really done a good job of identifying which topics are best suited to lecture, to small group demonstration, and hands-on training. And so we'll be talking a lot about those modes of instruction throughout this webinar. So as far as the curriculum project history, for many years, our curriculum existed largely as an oral tradition developed and delivered by farmer educators. People started asking, hey, have you written down what you're teaching? It became clear to us that we really needed to do that, and many years ago, we were very fortunate to have an apprentice, Albie Miles, who became involved with the farm kind of on many different levels. But one of his contributions was really kind of pushing us to really come to really think through our curriculum, lay out the courses so that they're in sync with the season as it progresses, and really kind of formalize our curriculum. And at that same time, Ann Lindsay was doing a lot of fundraising, and the two of them kind of teamed up and created an opportunity, so to speak, to really kind of put together this teaching and the curriculum manual. So the Teaching Organic Farming and Gardening was published in 2003 after a lot of hard work from a lot of different people and a lot of contributors. And then Teaching Direct Marketing and Small Farm Viability was put out in 2005. And what we're going to really be focusing on today is the fact that we have just recently revised both manuals, and so this is kind of our rollout.
Some facts that we know about from the first edition of manuals. We had thousands of requests, more than 10,000 online requests, and 5,000 page views a year. We've also, we sell the hard copies, which we'll make sure and tell you how to get if you prefer the big binder. We've sold 150 copies a year on average.
So who uses these resources? I suspect maybe a number of you are using them, or perhaps will be using them, but short of that, we've had a lot of use from state and community colleges, universities with student farms, sustainable ag programs, extension programs, urban and rural farms with internships or apprentice training programs or mentorship programs. Other users include master gardeners, international training programs, incubator farms, craft groups, urban ag training programs, And after really taking a good look at all of the revisions we've made, it's become really clear to me that this curriculum manual could very well be used, and probably is used by farmers just seeking information. The thing is just packed with information, and the nice thing about it is that the information is very accessible.
So at the UCSC farm, our training manuals are primarily used with our apprenticeship. We have 39 apprentices who come and study for 6 months. We also have a lot of undergraduate interns that we're increasingly teaching more undergraduates in classes and internships, and as well as graduate students and researchers and student workers.
So I briefly mentioned funding a minute ago. Here's the list. I'm not going to read through the list, but I think it's fair to say that this list is pretty extensive and really speaks to Ann Lindsay's ability as a fundraiser. And I think it also speaks to the fact that there's a lot of interest in producing curriculum materials for beginning farmers and other end users.
All right, so what's new? If you are familiar with the old version, in the main manual, Teaching Organic Farming and Gardening, Resources for Instructors, we've updated all of the units with new narratives and appendices, and as you know, a lot of information is chalked into those appendices. The core curriculum units have been most amended, and online there's also been added PowerPoint and instructional videos, which are really cool, and we'll show you a sample of later in this presentation. And then in our second manual, which is Teaching Direct Marketing and Small Farm Viability, we've again updated all units and added a few new units entirely, including food safety, marketing, and farm employees and alternative models for interns. So definitely check those out. All right, and so how do you use this resource? We're going to go over what is covered in each book or in each chapter online, and some of the new features that are included in the new edition. We'll also go over how these resources are organized, and if you are looking to get them online, they can be found at our website, which is casfis.ucsc.edu, and then click on About, and then Publications, and you'll see the covers of the manuals and links from that page. And all of the chapters can be downloaded independently, and or you can download the entire thing. And on that web page is also how to order the print copy if you'd like to buy an entire copy. I also do want to encourage people as they come on to definitely type in questions, and we're going to collect most of the questions and save time for discussion at the end. And as you are coming on, we are still hearing some beeps from people as they join, so just that is normal, and welcome.
Got to get my glasses on here. Okay, so here's the topic list for the main curriculum manual. We've got managing soil fertility, garden and field tillage and cultivation, propagating crops from seed and greenhouse management, transplanting and direct seeding, irrigation principles and practices, selecting and using cover crops, making and using compost, managing arthropod pests, managing plant pathogens, managing weeds, and reading and interpreting soil test reports. In the Part 2, Applied Soil Science, Soils and Soil Physical Properties, Unit 2.2, Soil Chemistry and Fertility, and then Soil Biology and Ecology. And then under Social and Environmental Issues in Agriculture, we've got social and environmental, sorry about that, we've got Development of U.S. Agriculture and the Food System, Social Issues of Current U.S. Agriculture, Environmental Issues in Modern Agriculture, and Sustainable Agriculture and Sustainable Food Systems.
And this is a brief overview of the second manual, Teaching Direct Marketing and Small Farm Viability. I'm not going to read all of this, but again, it is all available on our website, and we go over CSAs and small farm planning, as well as food safety, land tenure. Is a lot of really great information in here. And in both of these manuals, there is information on both farm scale and garden scale production, which is one of the, I think, unique qualities of the UCSC farm, the Cascas farm. So now I want to show you a sample of a unit. So this is making and using compost. It's 45 pages long, and it online includes a PowerPoint slideshow. And each of the units are laid out similarly. So you'll see there's a title page. This is the print version. Where there's an introduction, and then it goes into lectures and demonstrations. So let's take a look at this in detail. And again, feel free to type in your questions. So each introduction of each chapter, so it goes over the unit overview of what we're trying to accomplish in this demonstration or lecture. So for instance, in this one, using compost, high-quality compost is one of the essential organic matter inputs, along with green manures, used to manage soil health in organic farming and gardening systems. In this unit, students will learn the fundamental concepts and practices used to produce quality compost with aerobic, high-temperature composting techniques with a focus on garden-scale practices. So that just gives you an overview of what is in each chapter if you're leafing through. And then we break down the modes of instruction. So for instance, in this chapter, there's a lecture, which we estimate to be about an hour and a half, and then a demonstration of garden scale compost production, a hands-on exercise for students, which we estimate to take 3 hours with additional monitoring of the compost piles afterwards. And then a second demonstration, we go over field scale compost production. And there's assessment questions if you choose to use those either before and or after to figure out where your students are at, or to see if you have done your job in teaching. And then we also have put in each chapter the learning objectives. So what are we trying to teach here? So for instance, in this one it says we want to teach the concept that the benefits of aerobic hot composting and the benefits of compost in soil, for instance, and specific skills. So we've really tried to lay out exactly what each chapter is trying to do. And then we go into the nitty-gritty here. So sometimes, if you have the print version or if you print out the PDF online, we'll even take the chapter out into the field. So if I was doing a garden lesson or a compost lesson in the garden, I might even take this unit out, just staple it together. And it's great notes for your lecture and to get you prepared. So we'll go over the pre-assessment questions, again, to figure out where your students are coming from as a baseline, and then just define terms, talk about the benefits. So this is just really specific details of your topics. And then we go into the demonstration. So we, again, have an overview, and then I've laid out what we have found to be helpful for preparation and materials. So we've gotten really specific. So at the compost site, mark a 5 by 5 by 6-ish base for the pile before your students get there. Gather your materials, gather your tools, assess existing piles for examples of various stages of decomposition. So, it is really important to be very familiar with whatever you're teaching, but we've really laid out a roadmap here for how to feel prepared for your lesson. And then in the compost chapter, as in many chapters, there's multiple demonstrations or multiple lectures. So for instance, this is building and monitoring a compost pile. And then, not to be overlooked, because this is where the real good stuff comes, are resources. So we have tons of books and websites and other resources that are very much worth looking into yourself for more information and sharing with your students for sure. And then there's lots of appendices and extra information, again, to use both as an instructor or for your students. So for instance, here we have the heat curve of a aerobic compost pile of what's going on there. And then this is really cool. Jim's going to tell you about additional teaching tools that we've put on the online version.
So yeah, in terms of additional teaching tools in the units, we've added assessment questions that follow from lectures and demonstrations. There's also some really beautifully written and laid out narrative supplements and case studies that function as student readings. And then in the appendices, there's a lot of new material, including illustrations, graphs, diagrams, etc. And then the two things we're really excited about, PowerPoint presentations, which seem to be a more and more popular mode of kind of instruction for lecture. And then also something else we're very excited about is instructional videos, and we'll actually show you an example of one of those in just a minute. But I want to back up just a minute. When I was talking about the history, I mentioned Albie Miles as being instrumental, and I mentioned Ann Lindsay as being instrumental in terms of funding. Looking at all the previous slides here of all of the beautiful text, we definitely have to mention Martha Brown, because she's the one that really put this all together. So it was really a huge team effort, but just wanted to make sure we got that acknowledgement in.
So this is an example of the PowerPoint presentations in the Making and Using Compost chapter online, again at the casvis.ucsc.edu. So this is something that is downloadable if you are giving a lecture. And here's just a still from the PowerPoint presentation with images, because as you know, if you have used the binders, so much text can be a little overwhelming. So PowerPoint is a great way to add in some photos and just speak to different learning styles. And again, we also have a farm scale compost production PowerPoint. We do have a great case study about a farm here in California that is building farm scale certified organic compost. And so we just have information on some of the things that are necessary for going down that route. Again, these are all from the PowerPoints that are available downloadable online. And this is what the online page looks like. So if you are taking that route and you get to casvis.ucsc.edu and then go to About and Publications, you'll see each of the chapters by unit. So for instance, Unit 1.9, Managing Plant Pathogens, and there's a PowerPoint you see there. And then Unit 1.10, Managing Weeds, there's a PDF download of the chapter as well as video, which we will show you.
Okay, bear with us here.
Yes, this is our first webinar, so thank you all for being patient. There you go, Jim.
There, look at that. Whoopsie.
We're also using PCs, which is not our...
I'll let Jesse take over. So once we finished our bed top hoeing, the next step in our process is to use our 3-bar cultivator that runs behind the tractor. And this would be the basic cultivation system that any row crop operation should have. The first thing to take note of is that in our system here, our tractor tires are set up so that they're 72 inches on center, which would mean from center of one tractor tire to the center of the other tractor tire. So when we go to set up our sweeps on the back, again, you see there's 3 sweeps. This tractor would work over 2 beds. The distance from one sweep to the next is 36 inches. And then all the way to the end, there's our 72. So we know that these are measured exactly right so that they're working right in the center of those furrows. Okay, so that was a great example. That was a very small excerpt from a 17-minute video we did on managing weeds in small-scale organic farming systems. And that's been a very powerful tool, and a lot of people have seen it, and we've had nothing but positive responses to it. And I keep hearing people mention it as as we move forward. So I think there's a lot of potential for utilizing video to really get across a lot of these more complex topics like weed management. I mean, it's difficult to really get across some of these points in a field demonstration, and it's very difficult in a lecture format. But video, I think, has a lot of promise. So anyway, we wanted to share that with you just so you could see what we're all excited about.
Yeah, and if you haven't ever really used many online resources or videos, I think what Jim just said is really important, because so much of this does need to be taught in the field. But even when you're in the field, if you're giving a tractor demonstration, for instance, there's still limitations to what you can show. And so the great thing about that video is some of the diagrams that are put in there to really show what row spacing is. So it's a great addition to both lecture and in-field demonstration.
Okay, so just wanted to kind of touch briefly on the various modes of instruction. These are all modes of instruction that are outlined in the curriculum manual and can be adopted for all these various topics. We've got a lot of hands-on exercises and activities, and it's really nice to be able to have a kind of a written format when you go out into the field to follow a kind of a protocol to teach many of these topics. We rely very heavily at the UCSC farm on actual field demonstrations, and both field and orchard demonstrations. And it's always good to get people out in the field and really kind of thinking and seeing and doing and touching and feeling. So this is really important for this type of education. And field trips also are very critical part of the learning curve. It's always really good to see what other people are doing and visit other farms. This photo here is from an equipment auction that we took our apprentices to this last year that was really an eye-opener. It's a large-scale farm implement auction down in the Salinas Valley. It's very, very different from what we see every day on the farm. So really, really opens the eyes to all the possibilities and challenges too, of course. And then, yeah, a great deal of what's in the curriculum manual is based on lecture format. But we also do lots of panel presentations, and then anytime there is a lecture or panel presentation, it's always good to involve dialogue.
And something Jim and I actually have been doing more of is more of a roundtable format to really get, even different than a panel, just get everyone really participating and hearing from both beginning farmers and more intermediate and advanced people. Just getting that breadth of experience has been very rich.
And I found kind of along the same lines the roundtable, or even we can call it peer-to-peer, where if we're doing a course on say flower production, it's really nice to be able to bring in flower growers and have them present on the topic, and it really opens up the learning opportunity, because people really, especially beginning farmers, can really relate better to hearing the information coming from someone who is actually engaged in it and trying to do it for a living, and it's a much more powerful learning tool. And then, of course, oh, I'm sorry, Sky.
It's okay. Yeah, so hands-on demonstration and exercises, which again are outlined in the manuals, but just getting out there and, as you can see, sometimes getting literally into the soil. Just a picture of an instructor in a soil pit, just really driving the point home, because that's the only real way to learn farming and gardening, as you all know. And something that we teach and do at CASFIS is what we call I do, we do, you do. So first, the I do is more of demonstration, discussion, lecture, and then we do the apprenticeship model of side-by-side, working side-by-side with mentors or instructors and students, and then eventually working towards the you do, which is the independent activity to build skills, muscle memory, comfort with the process, leading towards competency and eventual mastery of the skill or topic.
And then, the more I teach these types of skills, just even things that are kind of outlined here in this picture, but also things related to weed management. It just strikes me every time. It takes hours and hours and hours and hours to master these skills, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, so just kind of wanted to cover some basic principles basic principles that guide instruction at the Caspis farm. I think all these principles kind of help Caspis really stand out as a leader in this field of experiential ag and garden-based education. We really strive for staff to work side by side with apprentices, allowing them both to work independently, but also kind of creating teamwork and creating opportunities for group projects. It can be very challenging, but it's really important as well in a kind of a teaching setting to create opportunity for responsibility and ownership. I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges, is to really kind of hand off the responsibility to the student. But it's a critical part of the learning process. So one of our primary goals really is student engagement and capacity building, and like I said earlier, it's really involves a lot of repetition and just doing things over and over again, and just really perfecting the skill and getting good at it. And there it is, the value of repetition, doing it again and again and again. So yeah, and it's always good to build in opportunities for observation, reflection, create problem-solving exercises, and it's really good to draw on connections from one practice, crop, or concept, and try to understand its application across the entire system. I think this was one of the things that Albie really helped us kind of understand and really refine. And we hear this a lot of times from apprentices. You know, it's like they want to really be able to understand the whole system, and it's hard to do in farming, because farming and gardening just relies on so many small specific tasks throughout the year that it is a challenge, but it's also really important for us to remember as instructors to really continually come back to kind of drawing connections across the entire system. And then yeah, there are many opportunities to kind of take management templates for one crop and then transfer those to other crops.
So that you know how to access all the new additions, they are all both manuals are available for free online. And if you do prefer the hard copy, we can sell it to you for $40 for the teaching direct marketing and $60 for teaching organic farming. So again, that website is caspis.ucsc.edu. Then click on About and click on Publications. And that's also where you access all of the PowerPoints and the videos. So definitely peruse those. And here's that cover page that you'll get to one more time just to familiarize yourself with the units. And you'll see you can download them by chapter.
Okay, and we definitely we're getting close to the end here, but we definitely wanted to just kind of cover really what it means to do a presentation. We think this is really important, and I think these are, we just kind of laid out some basic concepts here or definitions for, you know, what defines a good presentation. Definitely the instructor has to be passionate about the topic. I think that's absolutely critical. But I think along with that, the instructor has to be experienced and familiar with the topic. I think it's impossible, from my perspective, to teach any of these topics in this curriculum manual without a significant prior field experience and hands-on experience with the topic. Otherwise, the students might as well just read the curriculum manual by themselves, right? I mean, it's really important for the instructor to be familiar and experienced with the topic. And then it's also one of the things we've learned over time that it's critical to be aware of all of the different learning styles that people are accustomed to or familiar with or you know, or that they prefer. So an instructor really needs to be sensitive to those different learning styles and try to incorporate to the best of their abilities as many different learning styles within a lecture or teaching format as possible. It's always good to set specific goals for learning outcomes. I think the manual does a really good job of that. In the each of the lectures has a you know, kind of learning goals and outcomes. Obviously, you need to be well organized, and I think the curriculum manual goes a long way in assisting instructors with that organization process. In fact, that's what I probably appreciated about it most. If I'm doing a lecture, it's really helpful to preview the lecture as it's laid out in the manual, just because all of these modules have been so well thought out in terms of their organization and kind of, you know, the step-by-step. And then it's good to be mindful of the needs of the students.
Yeah, and maybe just a little more on learning styles. Oren and I do a lot of co-teaching, and one thing we do is bring visual aids or posters out into the field. So for instance, if we're doing a class on fruit tree pruning, I'll bring a large, you know, one of those paper poster boards that has diagrams or other topics like the fruit tree cycle of growth, just for people to get visual, for people who do learn better with seeing something, just to mix it up is helpful.
And then kind of continuing on, kind of some basic guidelines for instructors, and I think I still, as many presentations as I've given, I still kind of rely on this list every time I give a presentation to kind of remind myself of what I need to do. But it's always good to give a basic overview of class content at the beginning of the class or the demonstration. It's very important to make students feel confident with the topic. This is not always easy, especially when we get into some of the more complex topics that involve math and you know, math calculations like irrigation. But it's important. I think this is probably one of the most important ones, is keep to the basics of the topic. Instructors tend to they know so much and they want to share so much with the students that they can get in a little over the heads of the students pretty quickly. So it's really important to stick to the basics of the topic. It's also good to assess the level of skill in the audience. A lot of times when I'm giving presentations, there are people in the audience that have as much experience as I do. Say, for example, doing a irrigation uniformity test, and it's nice to be able to have those folks in the audience to tap into their knowledge base too, and have them share, and it really opens up the learning for the whole room. Always important to allow plenty of room for questions and discussion and information sharing. And then I always like to provide examples and share experiences and stories to back up points that I'm trying to make. I think that there's something to be said for a good story, and people like to hear that, and it just helps with the flow of the presentation. And then whenever I'm teaching and I run into problems with, when I can really tell, oh, the students, they're not getting this, or a couple of them aren't getting it, and I can stand there and repeat something over and over again, and we're going to be in the same boat. But if I can tap into to other students in the audience and have them attempt, in their words, to explain the issue or the challenge, that can go a long ways towards to really getting a complex topic kind of more generally understood by the audience.
Yeah, and I wanted to just reiterate that. I mean, either if it's tapping into your students or having a co-teacher, just the importance of having multiple voices or having different people try to explain the same thing can really increase the breadth of students that you reach.
And then continuing on, yeah, just encouraging participation and engagement really helps. It helps the students to feel like they're a part of the whole process. I like to ask questions to engage students. A lot of times I will take a lecture outline at the beginning of the lecture if I feel I have enough time, and I'll actually pose questions and try to allow the students on their own to come up with the lecture outline, and a lot of times they do it, and a lot of times they'll do even a better job, or they'll add things that I never even thought of. So it's really important, I think, to get student engagement, to have them really think through the topic with you. So kind of along those lines, just shifting the knowledge base from the teacher to the students, I think, is a really important step. Because we're their teachers, we're just kind of guiding the process, and sure, we have a lot to share, but so do the students. And the more engaged they are, I think the better they're going to learn. And then I like to provide detailed handouts at the end of the class, because I found in my experience that if they've got handouts, it's very distracting, and they're going to be flipping through them and trying to follow. So that's one of my little rules. And then again, I think we mentioned this kind of the notion of teaching to different learning styles is really important. And it seems to me that students lately have been really much more open to PowerPoint presentations than they were, like, 5, 6 years ago. So I think PowerPoint is a good, can be a good platform for teaching. And I always, definitely check in with students with eye contact. Just make sure everybody's kind of with you, and you can kind of read people's faces and find out if they're confused, or if they're following you, or if it's all making sense, or if light bulbs are going off. And definitely, speaking of light bulbs going off, I've definitely noticed recently when we've done field demonstrations for the public, as opposed to a lecture format for the public, on a topic, say, for example, like tillage or weed management, you really, in a field demo setting, you really see the light bulbs going off, where you don't see that so much in a lecture setting. And then, just make sure that the students are with you, right, that they're following along. You don't want to kind of leave somebody hanging or behind.
Maybe one more thing about sort of meeting your students' needs. One thing we're trying to do more this year at CASPIS is just the beginning of the day or the beginning of a demonstration, just going around and just asking anyone if they have any access needs, and that can be anything from, I'm waiting on a really important phone call because my grandfather is in the hospital, or, I actually am hard of hearing in one ear, and so I'm going to ask you to speak up. But it's a nice way to acknowledge that there might be different needs and to get them out on the table right away.
Okay, so here's our report card. Now you can rate us on how we've done here today with this webinar. I must say, this is a first for both Sky and I, so it's kind of interesting. It's maybe a whole new format for instruction. I don't know. I must say it's a little interesting talking to the computer instead of a whole bunch of happy smiling faces, but I'm imagining all of your happy smiling faces out there. So yeah, these are common mistakes, and I will say too, it's good for instructors to sit in classrooms, become the student, go to some workshops, see what other instructors do, kind of see how it feels to be on that other side of the lectern. These are some of the things I've just noticed over time that can kind of bring down the grade on a presentation. I think rushing through material, it never works. Attempting to cover too much information, showing busy slides with too much information, allowing students to derail the discussion or get off topic. This one takes a lot of skill on the part of the instructor to kind of diplomatically work with the students or class participants or workshop participants to keep them on topic and focused and not let them kind of derail things. I personally think it is never a good idea to go past the designated stop time. That's just, unless everybody is so into it and everybody's so engaged, then by all means. But if you say you're going to stop at noon, it's a really good idea to stop at noon.
Sometimes what I'll do to address that and other things is to check in at the stop time and just say, that we have reached the final time and anybody is free to leave, sort of release them, and then anyone, if you have more time, say if anyone's interested in staying another 10, 15 minutes, I'm happy to keep talking, but just to give that out to the people who need to leave.
And then I'm guilty of this one, making promises and not following through. I mean, the best example is, oh, yeah, don't worry, we'll cover that later. If you say that, you better mean it, because the students are on you, and you'll hear about it in your evaluations if you don't do that. Wait a minute, you said we were going to follow up on that. So I think this is good. I think we've got about 15 minutes left. Hopefully we followed all those guidelines pretty well. We definitely wanted to leave time for discussion, and you can type in questions. And this is just kind of the final slide before the last, thank you slide, with just a list of items. These are all things that, we would love to talk about and could probably talk about for hours and hours and hours. These are things that we think about all the time. How do you tailor the curriculum manual to meet your own needs? Got lots of ideas in that regard. I do that a lot myself. I'll take a lecture and I won't follow I'll use it as a guideline, but I'll kind of adapt it to what I want to do. I don't think I've ever given 2 lectures that are the same, so it's really hard for me to follow a specific lecture format. I think one of the other interesting questions is just thinking about farmers as educators, and that's a whole kind of webinar unto itself. And kind of along those lines, how do you, if you are a farmer and you are considering instruction, how do you do that? What's the process? The importance of demonstration farms, I think, is a really important topic, and the thing that I've really come to realize is they are absolutely critical, but they're also very expensive, and that's a whole nother discussion and webinar unto itself probably too. What is the role of extension? What's the best way to teach farming? This is what we ask ourselves all the time, and it's interesting I've been in the opportunity now working with beginning farmer rancher funding to actually work in the field with beginning farmers who went through the apprenticeship program, and I can see very clearly what they did and didn't learn, and sometimes I'm alarmed at that and wonder, how can we do this better? And as we mentioned earlier, I think there's a lot of power to the whole notion of peer-to-peer instruction. I think that is one way we can do this better. It's also critical to measure success, and I think evaluations are absolutely critical. And yeah, the list can go on and on, but yeah, we're set to take questions now.
Yeah, so we will turn it over to Martha, who's been collecting your questions, and will continue to do so, and have her ask us things that you are asking.
So here's a question from Elon, and he has used the older version of the manual in the past, which included both instructor lecture outlines and student lecture outlines, and he's asking, are those still available? And in fact, I can go ahead and answer this because, and Elon, they aren't. We decided to leave the 2 versions of the outlines out this time and just go with the full outline for both the instructor and the students, in part because people we surveyed prior to doing the revision said they weren't using both versions, and also we needed to make some cuts to the text in order to fit in all the new material, and as it was, we ended up adding about 100 pages of new material. So that's one of the things that went by the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a question I know that's going to resonate with a lot of people. How do you balance what the farm needs during a given week with what the students need to learn that week?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So the question, again, just so everyone heard it, is how do you balance what the farm needs and what the students need in a given amount of time? That is the crux of an educational farm.
When you figure that one out, let us know. I think you just have to think of the farm as an educational farm, and I think in our case at Caspis, I tell people often the crop is the students. That's the end result, or that's really what we're trying to produce, and the actual crop that we're growing is kind of secondary to that. But it creates a wonderful kind of learning opportunity, right? When you actually have to go out and harvest the crop and sell it, and yeah, I don't think on a teaching farm there's any simple answer to that question.
Yeah, definitely not. I think having some regularity to your schedule for the week can be helpful. If you for instance, if you do have 1 or 2 specific harvests and marketing days a week, and then you can really identify a certain block of time or a certain day that's spent more both working in the garden or for demonstrations, and just trying to just keep that running list of everything. I mean, that's the answer is in the question, which is balance, and just constantly trying to find that balance between getting things done and taking the time out to stop and pull everyone together. We also do have sort of like teaching assistants with our second-year apprentices, and sometimes multiple staff in site, so that we can have different small groups of learners at the same time. Maybe some are doing something a little more hands-on, and some are doing something a little more like learning. But yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say the level of learning is directly related to the amount of funding that you have for that learning. If you're relying 100% on produce income, you're just going to fund the farm. If you want to add in learning opportunities, that funding has to come from somewhere else.
Okay, so Nora's asking, over time, are you sensing speaker burnout? Are you having growers or other speakers or panel members decline an invitation to come and share? And also, are they volunteering their time, or do you compensate them somehow?
So we do have some speakers that have come for years and years, and some of them definitely look forward to it every year. We also do have, every year, we have some new speakers, and we're constantly sort of tweaking our curriculum and our speakers as we hear about, new people come into our circle, or as we expand what we're teaching. We do provide some payment to our speakers, probably not as much as they are truly worth, sort of like farming. Educators are also underpaid, but yes, we do compensate them for their time somewhat. And then we also do offer sort of after hour, or we encourage, I should say, we encourage our students to sort of self-organize after hours, like at, so our program is a residential program, so the students actually live together, but we encourage them to invite speakers in an evening or over dinner, over lunch for more, or peer-to-peer learning, just one thing of whenever you can get a group of beginning farmers or anyone together. I mean, there's just so many resources in the room, and I think that's also a way, I think a huge benefit of the CAPSIS program, but also just a way to keep everything really fresh, is that we have all of these new people every year with new energy and new skills to share. So I don't think we've seen too many people who have really burned out and dropped away. I don't think that's not one of our problems.
Okay, one more question. Is there some way to view this webinar again at a later time?
Yes, it is being recorded, and I'm going to send out, we're going to post it on the web, and I will send out a link to that later this week. So anyone who's registered, I've got your email.
Okay, Kat has another question about what are some of the examples of projects that you entrust to students to create opportunities for them to take on responsibility?
I will say this very quickly. Farmers and gardeners, generally speaking, are very protective of, and they want things done really well, and it's really hard to entrust beginners with a lot of different things, and it does take a certain level of kind of letting go. But hopefully Sky can come up with some great examples.
Oh goodness, I mean, I think that's really where that I do, we do, you do thing comes in. And yeah, you can't just totally give away the reins. That wouldn't be really the best way to teach, but identifying how you can demonstrate something and do side by side, and then just, it depends on the student, and every student's going to be different, but when you can really see that that person has gotten it, to let them go with it, and be, like Jim said, sort of let go of your idea of perfection. I think myself as a farmer or a gardener, I am kind of a perfectionist and OCD, and I also have to balance that with my teaching side, which is recognizing that all of us learn from not even just making mistakes, but with experimenting. And just, so I guess sort of that Buddhist concept too of beginner's mind, and encouraging that in your students, and also as instructors, just being open to the fact that your student might do something differently that could be helpful for you too. But really all aspects, honestly, from planting, tillage, planting, cultivating, harvesting. Our students manage the propagation, or pretty much on a day-to-day basis manage the propagation. Great, we have a message from Christoph, who's another instructor at CASFIS. Do you want to read that, Jim?
Oh, Christoph says project responsibilities via irrigation, propagation, greenhouse, and marketing services.
Thanks, Christoph, for that reminder. So we have identified some areas where we can give a lot of ownership to our students, what we call sub-rotations. So as they're in a specific site, a couple people are pulled out for a month, and they really focus on either irrigation, or in the greenhouses, propagation, or on marketing, and they'll get sort of like an intensive in that zone and can take on more responsibility, and then they'll pop back into the farming or gardening crew, and that's a good way because there's just so much to teach. I mean, especially when you have someone for one season, as you all know. So it's a way, obviously you can't go that deep in 4 weeks, but it's a way to not take away your whole crew, but to have these small groups like I referred to before, and have like 3 or 4 people just really go focus for a good part of every day on irrigation, for instance.
Yeah, thanks, Christoph. That helps quite a bit. And there are some things that unfortunately are very hard to do and require one-on-one, and probably the best example I can think of is tractor operation. Where it would take one-on-one, it would take some land that you don't really care about, and it would take a tractor maybe you don't care about so much, and a whole bunch of time and practice. And so there are some topics within this career path that are not so easy to really hand over to students. And
the CASFIS farm now is how many years old? 40
plus
7 or something. And so we have a lot of people in our community who know that we are a student farm, and it might be different for some of you who have a new student farm, but our students actually run the CSA and the farm stand, and so people are used to students and new farmers interacting with them. But I think that can be obviously, depending on how it's run, it could be somewhat chaotic, but we have had 40-something years to really try to figure out how to get a constantly changing crew in to be managing your marketing. But sometimes I tell my friends who are either farmers or manage landscape crew, try to explain what I do. I say, can you imagine if you were running a farm and then every 3 to 4 weeks you got a new crew throughout the entire season? So it's a little bit of insanity too.
So there's a question from Seth. Do you use any written means of assessing student learning?
Written means we don't have tests per se. Again, we do have assessment questions in each of what we've taken as the core curriculum. And so what I'll do more like sort of pop quiz kind of popcorn style answers, not really a graded thing to see where people are at. But yeah, we don't use the written test.
We are right at the moment as part of just at the beginning and ending, so it's not per class or per section or rotation,
right.
but more the beginning and the ending of the whole program, and that just gets roughly at kind of where people were before and afterwards in their own assessment. So it's not a instructor assessment of learning, but a self-assessment.
Yeah, so right when people come, we assess where they're at, and we have them answer the same questions when they leave, just so they can and we can get a sense of what they learned. But like so many things in farming and gardening, sometimes you don't realize what you've learned until 3 years later when you're doing it again.
So it's now, we're just at 1:30. 12:30, excuse me. So we're going to wrap this up. Or do you have more questions? Okay, great. So we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
A fun new educational experience.
Yeah, and again, we're going to be posting a copy of today's session on our website, and we'll email you a link in a few days. I'm also going to be sending out an email to you right now with a link to a survey. And this is our first webinar. We'd really appreciate your feedback. We'd really like to know what you'd like to see more of and how this was for you today. So please look for that email. It will be from me, Jan Perez. And we hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.